find Memphis Sounds on location, 1034 Audubon Drive, Memphis, Tennessee. Elvis is home before he goes to Graceland with the president of Curb Records, Mike Curb. Welcome to Memphis again.
Hey George, it's good to be here.
Mike, tell us, you got a great historic background in music, and that's what the show is about. I know you've had an association with Memphis music. You've been around, you've been MGM president, so forth and so on. Just talk about Memphis and music.
Well, to me, Memphis is where it all started. Memphis, home of the blues, home of rock and roll. I've had a love affair with Memphis all my life. I've loved music and music history, and the fact that we were able to buy Elvis's first home here, and the fact that and to preserve it, as you know, and it means so much to have you here because you know the color of each room and the color of
right.
each. We've had to get it back to exactly the same color of everything Elvis had, and we even found the exact measurement of the pool and even some original tile. And but we want this to be right, and it means so much to have you take an interest in this and to see this wonderful event today. Very, very special. I think it's too bad that Elvis isn't here to see it.
Well, you got that right, but he would really appreciate, Mike Curb, what you have done in perpetuating history here, this home, and presenting it to Rhodes College. Now, how did that come about?
Well, it basically was for sale, and the real nice couple that owned it,
Mike and Cindy.
Mike and Cindy had been through a divorce, and they still have a wonderful relationship with one another, and they cared about this home. And they wanted it to be in the hands of someone who would make sure that it was always preserved. And so I bought it from them. And we've entered into a relationship where Rhodes, we have the Curb Institute for Music History at Rhodes College. So we're able to have this almost as a laboratory for students to learn what happened. I mean, Elvis Presley's biggest hits, and what did he have? 8 number ones while he lived?
8 number 1 songs while he was living here, yeah.
While he was living here, and he bought this when he had his first big hit, big selling hit, when Heartbreak Hotel. When it was the first big selling hit. Of course, we all know that he made some awfully great records before that at Sun, but that first big selling record of Heartbreak Hotel gave Elvis the funds with which to buy this, and then he had 8 number ones while he lived here. We're talking about Hound Dog and Love Me Tender and Don't Be Cruel and
All Shook Up, Return to Sender, all those great songs. Jailhouse Rock.
He cut some of the greatest records, and then we also bought RCA Studio B up in Nashville.
I heard about that, yeah.
Actually, I think he did Return to Sender up there, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
But I'm actually now that I think of it, he did It's Now or Never and Surrender and Are You Lonesome Tonight up at RCA Studio B in Nashville. And
while he was living here, though.
Well, no, that was after he was out of the service when he did
Return to Sender.
When he did Return to Sender, and when he did I don't recall where he recorded Return to Sender, but he might have done that at Chip's studio.
No, Return to Sender, I think, was done at Studio B because he came out of a motion picture. He was already back from the Army, making movies again. That was one of his really big songs in a motion picture, Return to Sender.
Yes,
but you're right about Now or Never. He was living here at 1034 Audubon Drive when he did Now or Never, and when he did Heartbreak Hotel and Too Much and all those songs.
Yeah, I think when he came back from the service, right around 1960, he recorded It's Now or Never and then Surrender up at RCA Studio B.
That's right.
And then while he was living here in 1956, he cut Love Me Tender, Don't Be Cruel, All Shook Up, Hound Dog.
Yeah, right.
I mean, he had 8 number 1 records here, but he also cut about 40 of his greatest records. And it was, when you consider what he did at the Sun Studios prior to living in this home, the great records, you see what a heritage Elvis and Memphis have together. I mean, what a magnificent, how important Elvis has been to Memphis, and how important Memphis was to Elvis, and how important you were to Elvis.
Thank you so much, Mike. This is Mike Curb, president of Curb Records. Mike, you've been in the business for a long time, and you've been with some great artists. What was it about Elvis that here he is 32 years later, he's still out there doing it?
Well, there can only be one king, and when it comes to the rock and roll era, there was just one king, and it was Elvis Presley. Elvis would, if he were here, he would say he didn't invent rock and roll. He knows the great musicians that were doing R&B and rock and forms of rock and roll prior to Elvis. But what Elvis did was, as we all know, is he took rock and roll to the world, and he became the king of what has been the greatest form of music of my lifetime and your lifetime.
Mine too, exactly.
And so he's our king, and how fitting it was to hear Ronnie McDowell singing "The King Is Gone" right here in Elvis's first home. It was amazing.
Mike Curb is our guest on Memphis Sounds. George Klein.